Hi, it's Susanna and Jarrett. As we look to finish recording Season 3 of the Well-Trained Mind podcast, we want to do another question and answers episode. Last season, we so enjoyed receiving questions from you all. So if you have a question for me or for Susan Bauer, send it to podcast@welltrainedmind.com. That's podcast@welltrainedmind.com. We're going to try to answer as many questions as we can on the final episode of this season. Thank you so much for your participation. Now enjoy the episode.
Hi, I'm Susan Bauer, co-author of The Well-Trained Mind.
And I'm Susanna Jarrett, editor at the Well-Trained Mind Press, and we're talking about education for all parents and for all children in all sorts of settings. And today we're so excited to have Justin Moore with us.
Yay, Justin!
Justin's been working at the press for 17 years. He works behind the scenes most of the time, proofreading, editing our curricula, doing all kinds of things behind the scene. And we're so excited to have you with us today, Justin.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
So Justin and I have known each other for a very long time because when Justin was either a freshman or a sophomore at William & Mary.
A sophomore.
You were a sophomore. So when Justin was a sophomore at William & Mary and I was teaching at William & Mary, unconnected these two things, he showed up at the church that my husband was the minister at, wearing a very, very snazzy suit. Because that's what you do when you go to church. So he then became a faithful member of the church and has been in the church for the last 17 years as well. Worked for the press when he was an undergraduate. And then after he went to graduate school, he came back and worked at the press some more.
Yes, I did. So yeah, I like to say that I've known Susan Bauer in 2 millennia because I met her in 1998. She came to speak to a student group and she talked about the X-Files. I was wearing an X-Files t-shirt, and so we hit it off.
Yes, we did indeed. And I think I had you in at least one class back in those long ago days.
Yes, although I took a writing class from you.
Writing class. Yes, indeed. So so Justin and I have been on the same page for a long time. And one of the wonderful things about Justin's tenure with the press is he started with us back where we still in that horrible little trailer out behind the horse barn when you came on?
Yes, we were. So our entire inventory was kept in the body of a semi-truck, a tractor trailer.
Oh, I forgot the semi-truck. I blocked it. That's what I did.
And so if we wanted to know how many books we had, one of us would have to brave the cold or the summer heat and climb inside an old semi-trailer tractor body.
Which my cousin parked over here for us because he wasn't using it at the moment. And that was our warehouse.
Yes, and we would count the books. Yes, and then we would print out the orders one at a time over the world's slowest internet. And I am glad to say that we are no longer in that situation, but it was fun.
And then we would put them in laundry baskets and take them down to the post office. And it's a little teeny tiny post office. And they got to the point where when they saw us coming, they would slam the windows down and take an early lunch.
And pretend to be closed. Yes.
Yes. Yep. That was that. So anyway, that's the past. But the fun thing about Justin having been with us for so long, well, first of all, I just want to say on a personal level, Justin has an incredible mind for accuracy and detail in a way that I do not. A lot of what I do involves doing big picture writing. Mm-hmm. And the problem with big picture writing is that you do this gorgeous big picture of a historical event and you forget that there's a clown eating a sardine with a balloon in the front who really doesn't belong there. And Justin, both for the press and then also for the books that I write for Norton, has been my go-to to say, actually, that's not exactly right. Be a little bit more precise. And it has been such a wonderful gift to me, Justin, that you have done that.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoy it and helping you erase the clown with the sardine from the front of the painting. I hadn't thought of that metaphor before, but I like it. Excuse me, yes. There is a clown.
Yes, I feel like I just did this actually on a draft that you sent back to me and you were like, actually, this is completely wrong. And I said, you're right. So anyway, because Justin has been working with us for so long, he doesn't just proofread and edit. Justin, how long were you the customer service guy?
I was the customer service guy for a couple of years, and then we all continued to wear a lot of hats. And so for about 8 or 9 years, I was one of the customer service folks and would take my turn answering phone calls and emails and faxes and letters and ravens and carrier pigeons. And So we've gotten all sorts of questions over the years, and I think I've seen just about all of them.
Well, and I think you're still sort of a go-to for the current customer service team when they get a request they haven't seen before. They do tend to give you a yell and say, Justin, have you seen this one before? And usually you're like, yes, back in 2003, that arrived on the back of a mammoth, and I've already answered it.
It's pretty much like that. I'm sort of the institutional memory of a chunk of the press because I've been here longer than some of the customer service folks. So I'm like the old man of the village in the Magnificent Seven, and he knows what he's seen before and which things come and go over the seasons.
I've never seen the Magnificent Seven.
You should correct that. It's great.
Okay. Justin also really loves movies. Okay. So Susanna.
Our second movie recommendation of the season, by the way. We'll have to put it in the show notes.
Oh, yeah. We do need our movie recommendations because we keep running into weird ones. Okay. So Susanna, why do we have Justin here today? Tell our listeners.
Justin, since you have so much experience in all parts of the press, but especially with the customer service side, we want to talk to you about some of the common, but also some of the wacky customer service requests that we receive and take people behind the scenes at the Well-Trained Mind Press. And and you can give us your hot takes on questions you wish people would stop asking us here at the press.
Sure. So there are so many, and I'll say right at the outset, 99.9% of the questions or comments that we get are wonderful, and they're from homeschoolers or teachers or parents who are just looking for a little bit of information to do a better job. And we don't judge that. We love it. We love to help. And we have, I think, one of the more involved and attentive customer service teams in terms of homeschool curricula. Having said that, we're not here to talk about that.
We're not here to talk about the fact that, I'll just put this in, you are always welcome to call the press and say, I want to homeschool and I have no idea where to start. That's why we're here. But those are not the sorts of phone calls that get Justin. Justin had a habit for many years. I'm sorry, I'm going to out you a little bit, Justin, here, where he would sit at his laptop and he would type out an answer of what he actually wanted to say to one of our wackier customer service report questions. And he would read it out loud as he typed. And I would say, Justin, you're going to hit return by accident and it's going to go out and you'll never get it back again. So I don't think you do that anymore, Justin, but it was a venting of sorts that you seemed to need.
Yes.
I wish we could collect all those into a book and have them.
I know. And fortunately, he deleted them all as he wrote them. But yes, we should have kept them.
So I'd have to say the number one thing that we get, the number one question that we wish people would stop asking us is the question, will you publish my manuscript, which is either entirely a bizarre manuscript or has nothing to do with what we publish? So there's a list somewhere, I guess, of small publishing companies who may take a look at your manuscript. And I wish we could get off it, but so far we haven't been able to. So about once every other month, we get a big, thick envelope. And a couple years ago, one landed on my desk and I opened it up. And within the first page, I realized it was a book revealing that the Earth is actually flat. And actually sort of not only flat, but hollow. I don't know how that works, but it was a 400-page manuscript with charts and graphs and all kinds of explanations about how NASA and every airline pilot and every map maker is in on this conspiracy to convince us that the Earth is round when it's actually flat and hollow. And
simultaneously.
Yes. And at first I was, of course, laughing and reading this out loud to my coworkers, and we thought this was great. But then, as a lot of these conspiracy theories do, it eventually settled on blaming the Jews, or this one happened to blame Jewish people. Other ones blame other people. But there's always, in the end, some group that is secretly manipulating the world so that it's this way.
And you're saying this is not a good match for us, Justin?
It's not really what we want to put out into the world because it's false and it's dangerous and it's wacky. And so we get these manuscripts, and some of them are like that, where they're just horrible. They're horrible. But others of them, they might be good. We don't know. But one person wanted us to tell the extremely R-rated version of his bloody coming of age as a helicopter door gunner in the Vietnam War. And that sounded maybe interesting, but we're a textbook publisher for K through 12. And if we tried to get kids to read that, well, actually, some kids would probably love to read that, but their parents would not appreciate it. And we would hear from them.
I'm seeing graphic novel here.
Yeah. So maybe one of our paper doll historical figures could be. Anyway, a lot of times people send us stuff that is just not a match for us. The other day, we got a postcard for someone who wanted us to either publish his book or he wanted Susan to contribute to it. I'm not sure which, but it was the title of the book was going to be Sex with Jesus. Which I gotta
Thank you for
admit,
not passing that one on to me.
I gotta admit, that is a catchy title.
We probably could sell that one.
You won't forget it if you want to.
So, but a lot of times what people do is they'll send us a manuscript, but we wish that they would take a look at us first and take just a couple of minutes to maybe look through our website, see the other books that we publish, the other materials that we publish, and see if our books are a good fit with their book. There are a million publishers out there, and some of them would probably love to publish your bloody coming of age story in the Vietnam War helicopter door gunner thing. But we are about publishing educational resources. And so it's just not us. We don't really do novels.
Oh, we don't do poetry either, by the way. I mean, sometimes you don't get those, Justin, because when I see the manuscripts, I just pop them right back in the mail again. So I don't pass on to you the volumes of poetry that we receive.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. The other thing, and this might be helpful if folks are thinking about writing a book or a homeschool resource, there's a lot of times we get really great manuscript suggestions, but they're just that, they're suggestions. So someone emails and says, I would love to write a K through 6 homeschool science curriculum that's easy to use and that satisfies people of every religious group and scientific viewpoint. And we say, that's awesome.
Please do. Boy, do we wish you would.
Right.
We really wish you would. Hint. But they don't include any sample or any outline or anything. And when we ask them to, sometimes we never hear back. So if you're interested in writing a homeschool book, we need to know, because we're not a charity, we're a business. We need to know if it's worth our time to publish and sell and take the risk. And so we would love to see a couple of sample chapters just to see if you can write something and if you've done a little bit of work on this and you have some stick-to-itiveness and an outline that shows us what the rest of it is going to look like or what topics you want to cover. And we'd love for you to send us that, as long as it doesn't end with, the earth is flat or it's the fault of insert ethnic group here. But yeah, so manuscripts is probably my top one that I wish people would stop hitting us with. It also just kills a lot of trees.
It does. And there's so much good information out there. I speak as someone who now as a writer, I know what I'm doing, but I've been doing it for 30 years. And when I started out, I didn't know how to submit a manuscript. Right. Also, back then, I would print it out on a dot matrix printer and put it in a typewriter box. So it's a whole different world. But if all you have to do is Google how to propose a manuscript, and you can find so much good information, there's really no excuse for sending vague and inappropriate submissions. I mean, I will say something else that we get a lot of are people who know that we now do business as Well-Trained Mind Press because we publish classical materials in the model that proposed in the Well-Trained Mind. But when we started out, we were Peace Hill Press because Peace Hill is the name of the farm where the nasty trailer and the semi were parked and where we were actually doing all the work of publishing the books. And because of that name, people still send us books about yoga, books about meditation, things that are just completely inappropriate. So people, it doesn't take a lot of Googling to figure out what's the right market for your particular manuscript.
Right. And what Justin provided is kind of an outline for submission, regardless of where you want it to go. It's the same process. Looking at the publisher, you're thinking about what do they publish, sending a cover letter, sending a sample, depending on the type of writing. It may be a longer sample. If it's a whole curriculum, we're probably going to want like a first unit fleshed out and then an outline for the rest of the program. If it's just a book, then just the first chapter or a smaller sample is fine. But that's the same regardless of what you're trying to publish, where you're trying to go. It's just about finding the right place, because we can't really market stuff that's not for homeschoolers. Our people, the people who come to us looking for books, they're looking for curriculum. And so even if we loved your novel, just absolutely loved it, like it's the best novel we ever read, it wouldn't be ours to sell. That's not really what we do here.
Or your children's picture book, because we do get some of those also. And, we do publish for kids, but we don't publish picture books for kids. That's a whole different world.
Yeah. And when you propose something, but you don't send any illustrations for your children's picture book or anything like that, we just don't know what it's going to be. So it's sort of like 50-50. Who feels lucky? Like, we don't know if this is going to be the next story of the world or if it's going to be some ridiculous. So,
yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our next set of questions you would like people to stop asking, Justin.
So we do love answering questions about homeschooling, and we are more than happy to take the time to do that. And we have experienced people who enjoy talking with homeschoolers and classical schoolers and everything in between. But one thing that is sometimes unhelpful is people call us in a panic and they've decided to homeschool. This happened a lot in March of 2020, but even in normal times, people will call us in a panic and they've decided to homeschool, and they say, please design an entire curriculum for me for all 4 of my kids, and they have the following interests, and I need you to schedule it down to the minute.
For every subject.
Yes, for every subject, including the ones that you guys don't publish. But we do know a lot about homeschooling, our materials and other materials, but we wrote, Susan and her mother wrote a whole book about that. And it's really, you don't want to be a homeschooler so that someone can tell you everything to do every step of the way. I think that's why a lot of people went into homeschooling, was to get out of that kind of rigidity and find out what works for their kids, a lot of which is going to be, unfortunately, some trial and error. So we can help you find some of the best stuff and avoid some of the worst stuff. We can recommend certain things, but a lot of it, you're just going to have to try out and see what works best with your child and your child's particular way of learning or age or maturity level. And so we can offer guidelines, but we're not gonna send you a spreadsheet with everything that your child should be doing from sun up to sundown, nor would we really want to.
Well, and I have sometimes been in the office when I have heard a member of the customer service team taking these phone calls. And what always strikes me is that the person on the other end of the line has not done any research. So they don't have a base of information to work from. It's not like they're saying, look, can you give me some advice about whether Rod and Staff or Grammar for the Well-Trained Mind would be better? They just say, what should I do for grammar? And there's obviously been no prior thought put into it. And look, I mean, I'm a parent of, at one time, I had 4 children under the age of 10. I understand being overwhelmed. Yes. I'm older now. But that doesn't mean that you should rely on someone else to tell you step by step what to do. And I just even, at secondhand listening to those conversations, find them so frustrating because I personally, not Justin, me, want to yell at the person on the other end of the line, don't homeschool your kids. Because that's me. Because if you can't take some time to sit down and think about what your goals are and what your options are, you are not in a good starting place. It's only going to get more complicated from here on out. So that's my take.
Absolutely.
If I could plug here, since summer of 2020, more recently this year, we published on our website a resource that can help you get that research done, because it is overwhelming if you're starting homeschooling with 4 different kids and so many different subjects. And so we sort of sifted through and found the cream of the crop for every subject, every grade level or stage of learning. And we have a subscription portal that you can use to help plan your homeschool, which I think is a really useful tool for paring down. I mean, there's so much out there for homeschooling now. It is absolutely overwhelming. And so we're just offering, for grammar, here are 3 or 4 options, and here's, who this works for typically, why this works, and you can kind of start somewhere. And that resource also has curriculum planning sheets that I think are super, super helpful if you're overwhelmed with your homeschool planning. So we do have stuff. Our customer service team is so, so kind and amazing, but they can't do it all for you. They're going to try their darndest to help you with all your questions. But we now offer this portal, which is a great place to start your research.
Absolutely.
Oh, and let me add another plug. This podcast isn't primarily about plugging, but hey, we're a business. So here's what we do. So my colleague, Julia Collier, who is the academic dean at the Well-Trained Well-Trained Mind Academy, and I actually offered together a consulting service. It's called Well-Trained Mind Learning Services. You can Google it, and we'll put a link in the show notes, where you can actually book a session with us, and we will do exactly what people ask our customer service people to do for free, which is we will go through everything that your kid is doing, all of the challenges, what curriculum might work best, and help you work out a plan. The thing is, you're going to have to pay for it because this is our time. This is our expertise. This is our, decades of knowledge about what is out there available to homeschoolers and what works for particular families and particular learners. So, you should, I guess you should expect to pay for expertise if you need really deep expertise in a particular area. We love talking to homeschoolers and we love designing programs for homeschoolers, but that's not something that our customer service department does. That's not supposed to be their main role.
And I can put a link to both of those resources in the show notes for folks who are interested.
I will say, just as a business owner, I think our customer service team provides so much more support than any other customer service team I have ever seen in publishing. Try calling Harcourt Braith, okay, and asking them for help with one of their grammar books. Nothing is going to happen. You're just going to get disconnected. But we provide that, and we will continue to provide it as well as we can, but we can't provide you with the entire curricula step by step.
Absolutely.
We'll be back after this.
Grammar for the Well-Trained Mind is a complete grammar curriculum for middle grades through high school. This program's unique instructional design has students cycle through material 4 consecutive times to fully master the mechanics of proper English usage. If teaching grammar intimidates you, have no fear. Each lesson is short and scripted, so there is no prep work for the teacher. You can open up the core instructor text and go. Students follow along in their matching workbook and can review detailed explanations for their work and the corresponding key. Grammar for the Well-Trained Mind, the efficient and effective grammar program, can be paired with any writing curriculum, including Well-Trained Mind Press's Writing with Skills series. Check out samples on our website, welltrainedmind.com, and use the code PODCAST at checkout for 15% off your purchase.
So if we've covered that, I would say the third kind of thing that we wish people would stop asking is for us to, how should I put this? For us to win history for them. Or
I like that.
To win the battle of history for their nation or their group. So this one takes a little bit of explaining. Every autumn, the leaves start to change here in Virginia, and the weather gets a little cooler, and we start to get a crop of letters from Korea, from the Republic of Korea, of letters and emails from groups of school children who've been asked to practice their English by writing really sweet and earnest letters to Miss Susan Wise Bauer, according to the letters, at Well-Trained Mind Press, asking her to please stop hurting their people and their culture by calling the Sea of Japan the Sea of Japan. And they would like us to call it the East Sea.
If you look at the story of the world, you will see on the maps, it says the Sea of Japan.
Yep. So it's the little body of water between Japan and the Korean peninsula. And so it says the Sea of Japan. So
this would be Story of the World 4, by the way.
Yes. So we get these letters, and we always have to respond until we found out that it was actually sparked by a sort of quasi-governmental think tank or booster organization for Korea that likes to pressure politicians and publishers to say things in a more favorable light to the people of South Korea. So just real quick, there has been a dispute since forever over what to call this body of water, and it actually has brought to a grinding halt the publication of the latest edition of the charts and maps of all the oceans in the world by the International Hydrographic Association. They haven't published a new one since 1953 because Japan and Korea can't agree.
Wow.
Now, to us, sitting here, to me, this Western white guy sitting here at this desk, I don't initially see anything that makes this huge and weighty, but it is, because what it really represents is Korean backlash against decades and decades of really brutal colonization that the Japanese Empire did against Korea from the end of the 19th century until 1945, which the Japanese government never really apologized for, and sometimes hints was maybe a good thing, which it really wasn't. And this is this whole massive debate, and it really matters to them whether we call it the Sea of Japan or the East Sea. So we took an honest look at it, and we do every few years just to make sure we're still doing the right thing. And we decided to stick with Sea of Japan because it's what the child will most likely encounter in future academic or news readings. It's still the usage that's favored by the U.S. State Department, the United Nations, National Geographic.
It's still a recognized international designation.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, I have some sympathy with them. I have some sympathy with it, but the whole thing is kind of a slippery slope. Also, East Sea isn't a great name because it's like east of what? And there's a lot of other bodies of water that are also called East Sea in their local languages. And so at first I just thought this was just us. And then so many of them wrote to a legislator in Virginia that the Virginia legislature, the state where we are, passed a law that any newly published textbooks, we had already published ours, but any newly published textbooks had to put both names in there. And this is something that the House of Delegates of Virginia spent a long time debating, at the same time that they were passing all kinds of laws like voting to tax tampons as a luxury good and doing all kinds of other quote unquote useful things. And so now
we'll do that one on a future Hot Takes.
It's become this whole thing. And we're getting caught up in something we didn't decide to get caught up in, but it's exemplary of people deciding that our history does not vindicate their group or their nation. So we get a lot of this in American history. Susan wrote in The Story of the World 3 about the Trail of Tears, a very well-documented historical fact that the U.S. government removed many Native American nations from their homelands and it basically ethnic cleansed them into a whole other part of the continent. And that is a thing that happened that Americans did. And whenever we get letters about this, it's sort of like, how dare you be down on America? It's the same kind of thing when we get letters about maybe the Israel-Palestine conflict, which is obviously currently and brutally ongoing on both sides. And we get letters about the way we depict the founding of Israel in the 1940s. And on the same week, I got letters saying this depiction is far too pro-Israeli and this depiction is far too pro-Palestinian, pro-Arab, and anti-Israel. And it wants us to depict their people as sort of, whoever the letter writers people are, as either
on the right side.
Exactly, on the right side. And sort of either innocent victims or shining heroes, of which there are precious few in history. And we get these demands to be less neutral. And we're going to try our best to be accurate, but accurate isn't neutral, and accurate also isn't going to be partisan towards your point of view. So
it reminds me of a time I was at a homeschool conference and a homeschool parent came up to me and asked, is your history the real history or the new history, or is something in that line? And I think this all goes to speak to the fact that, you know, we try our best we're not getting paid off by interest groups to change titles.
We'd be so much better off if we were being paid by interest groups.
Right.
Wait, can you do that?
Might have a fancier office.
That's not happening.
Is that a thing you can do?
I don't know.
The point is that, you know, the history is the history, and whatever pressure campaigns we get, we try to keep it to, you know, what feels right outside of the pressure from interest groups that come to us.
And, you know, this has just been an ongoing issue with all 4 volumes, particularly of The Story of the World. I mean, I remember, Justin, when we first put out Story of the World Volume 2, when we cover, I think the chapter's called, you know, the what? Okay, let me look actually so that I can be very clear about this. The Rise of Islam. The section called The Rise of Islam. I used the Quran and it's quotes from Muhammad to put together a story about Muhammad telling his followers to go and rob caravans on their way to Medina so that they could feed their children because they were starving to death out there in the desert. And I thought that I wrote this in a way that was very faithful to the Quran, faithful to the text, faithful to the traditions. But we got absolutely slammed by a very well organized pressure group, which wanted us to eliminate any reference to Muhammad ever doing anything violent ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this was, as I recall, Justin, was not long after 9/11.
Mhm.
Right. And there was a tense atmosphere all around.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
most definitely it was a tense atmosphere, but not unlike the tense atmosphere that we're living through now with the Israel-Palestine conflict, right? So what happens with history is you write history and then things happen in politics, which is just current history is politics, and that changes the way people read the history that you have tried to write in the most faithful manner possible. And then we get letters, and the customer service people get letters and phone calls and diatribes and sometimes really nasty reviews online.
Mhm.
And, if that's how you want to spend your time, then that's fine, I guess. But we just wish you wouldn't tackle us with it because it takes our time away from writing really good resources for homeschoolers to use. And we're not going to change the carefully considered history that we've put out there because of some current crisis.
Exactly. We'll definitely take a look to make sure we haven't made a mistake. And people have
And we do
pointed
make
out,
mistakes. Oh,
of
yeah, we
course,
make mistakes.
yeah. People have pointed out, everything from tiny typos to, one time we left the coastline off of Belgium, which I will say
Darn.
is not a small error. And the Flemings and the Walloons were not happy about that, but we accidentally gave part of Belgium's coastline to France and part of it to the Netherlands and made it a landlocked country, which it happens to not be, on several maps, which we didn't find out about until after a school in Belgium bought 30 copies of the book and then said,
Oh, no.
so we are happy to change stuff and we are happy to say we
Right.
got it wrong, but we don't want to change stuff just to make you feel better because the events are unfortunately the events.
Right.
So I feel like, Justin, that a good transition from that particular topic to perhaps the next one is the number of people who call and ask if I have become woke or apostate or left wing or right wing, I guess, maybe depending.
Yes, my favorite. So yes, definitely has Susan gone woke? But the best version of this actually happened on a phone call. So this was a few years ago and the office was even smaller than it is now. And I got a phone call one day at the customer service desk and I picked up the phone and Susan happened to be standing within 3 feet of me. And I picked up the phone and I said, well-trained mind press, how may I help you? And the woman at the other end her voice was shaking with anger and shock. And she said, "Why does Susan hate the Lord?" And I didn't say anything because my mind just went, I looked over at Susan and then I took the phone and moved it into the supply closet where I could be a few feet away and shut the door. And I said, "I don't think Susan does hate the Lord." So,
I can see putting your head out. Susan, I have a question for you.
yes, quick update. So basically what had happened was that the person, and I'm trying to say this as faithfully as I can, not exaggerate, she had read one page out of context from the preface of a book, not by Susan, that we had published and called us immediately before even finishing the page. She was shaking with outrage and she was telling us how she was going to go on Facebook and tell everyone that she knew to stay away from this book and get rid of any books by us that they might have in their home, which I know you all have spoken about before as this sort of...
We have talked about this cleanse the evil things sort of impulse. Yeah.
This sort of magical view of the books. But anyway, I spent a long call, mostly in the supply closet, talking her down and trying to hear her out and explain what the book did and didn't say. And by the end of it, we had agreed that it may not be best for her family, but she at least wasn't going to go on Facebook and tell everybody not to buy the book because she agreed that maybe it was possible that she had misunderstood it. I guess I would say if you're reading one of our books or any publisher's book, or you hear something about a company or a publisher secondhand online, which now happens often, just take a couple of deep breaths before you go to war or fire off an angry email or Facebook post or whatever. Right now, there's a lot of folks, a lot of companies who can make money and clicks and gain followers and influence off of exploiting your negative emotions. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just how the algorithms work. Things that make you angry and outraged, they spread a lot faster than any good news or good reviews. And so it is in a lot of companies' best interest to keep us all riled up and angry and sharing things when we don't even have the full context. But even beyond that, I would say, like, if you're getting incandescent with rage over just a few words in a book, maybe take a second, and I'm not a psychiatrist, of course, but like ask yourself, why are you so upset about this? What's it saying about you or what you're trying to build in your home or your homeschool? And it has maybe more to do with what you're scared of or what you're angry about than what we're trying to do and whether or not we're woke, which I'm still not even sure what that means.
Yeah, that's one of my peeves as well, is when people use that word, which they generally seem to think a thing that I don't think, but you probably think it. And because you think it, you don't think like me.
I like that.
So when people use that word, I usually ask for them to define it, which often they can't. So I'll just put that in there.
Mm-hmm.
But we do get, I feel like the word is dying, which is great. We cannot put it in its grave and cover it up fast enough for me. But there will be another phrase that represents, are you safe, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
And Susanna, you and I have talked about this on previous podcasts, that safe is not one of the criteria, I don't think, that you should be using when you're selecting curricula, sorry.
Right.
Safe means not challenging me, not telling me something I don't want to hear, not presenting me with a picture of the world that I don't recognize, right? All of which are actually goals of education. So I think, Justin, when you took that particular phone call, I think we were a young enough company and we were coming out of this sort of very, how should I put it, insular way of looking at homeschooling, where many people who were homeschooling were doing it for safety because they didn't want their kids to be challenged. They didn't want their kids to be confronted. And certainly, the younger your child is, the more that is absolutely a vital consideration for parents. But I think at that point, more people were homeschooling in order to avoid exposure to controversial ideas than perhaps are doing so now.
I think that's right. And the other thing that's interesting to note is that, and I'm not claiming us to be super prescient or anything, but The Story of the World 3 was written in something like 2002. So if we say something about, say, the Trail of Tears or slavery or emancipation or anything like that, it probably has a lot less to do with whatever's trendy in recent, discourse, and just has to do with Susan sitting in a little local library in 2002, just trying to write a history of the world and writing down some things that happened, which maybe didn't get put in the version of history that some folks wish. America, just to take our country that I happen to live in and be a citizen of, is an amazing place, and it's both better and worse than you think it is. And it's more interesting when you get to hear the good and the bad about it, where America is neither this shining alabaster heavenly city, nor is it the source of all evil in the world. That's just a boring story. And a couple of years ago, we got accused of being woke communists because we posted...
Oh, wait, can you be both at the same time?
I guess.
I didn't know that.
We wear a lot of hats at this company. We're busy people. So we were woke communists because we posted a photo of a sign from our county, a historical road marker that the Virginia Department of History put up in, I think, the 1930s about something awful that had happened to Native Americans at the hands of English colonists.
Oh, is that the one on Route 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that one's been there as long as I can remember. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying anything about your age, but yes, it's old. It's super old.
It's really ancient.
And I thought, You know who wasn't woke communist was the Virginia Department of History and Antiquities in the 1940s. Like,
Right.
Yeah, probably not.
But
famously not communist. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I think is interesting about the story you told Justin about this reader who was upset was that the book wasn't actually one of our curriculum. It was something different, and I think that's an important note because I think Susan, you've been very open about your political persuasion on your Facebook and on this podcast, but our curricula, I feel like, is pretty objective, very usable by folks from all different political persuasions and backgrounds and religious backgrounds. I'm really proud of the story of the world and the other things that we publish here for those reasons. And so I think it's just an important distinction there that a lot of times when we get pushed out of a homeschool conference or accused of being woke or particularly of one political persuasion, it's not actually our textbooks and our school books, not textbooks, but our school books that are being accused of that. It's something that was said in another context.
Yeah, it's like surrounding dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got one more question for Justin.
Okay.
And before we ask him that question, I have to go grab my phone. So we may or may not want to cut this out of the final broadcast because I'm waiting on the goat shearer. And the goat shearer, I've just realized, is going to text me with his ETA, but that will not come through on my computer. It will only come through on my phone, which I have plugged in on the other side of my office. And it just dinged at me. So hang on. I'm going to grab my phone because the goat shearer might be arriving shortly.
We may actually want to leave this in because there are so many farm related cuts that we do on this podcast that I feel like people should know that sometimes it's a goat shearer, sometimes it's a horse that needs help.
You know, it is unfortunate, but one of the realities of farm life is that you are always at the mercy of the shearer because there aren't that many of them. And they pretty much do whatever they want and show up whenever they want. And you just have to be there waiting for them and say, yes, sir, no, sir, sorry, sir. Otherwise, your animals just keep all their fleece.
I think the first year that you had sheep, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you try to shear them yourself without a shearer?
Oh, I did. I didn't just try. I did shear them myself. I sheared them myself. And it took me so long to do each sheep. I still have this very, very vivid memory of Pete, my husband, sitting in one of the stalls with this half-sheared goat on his lap, apologizing to the goat for how long it was taking me to do the shearing, while the goat sort of looked at him with soulful eyes and went, in this very sad little voice. It took me so long to shear them that by the time I had finished, it was time to shear them all again. And I was like, nope, not doing this again. I am finding a shearer and I will be at that shearer's beck and call, and I am good with that.
And I think the shearers know that. They know
Oh,
that,
they do.
Yeah.
Oh, they know it.
They're
They
in
know.
demand.
If any of your children have an interest in shearing, this may be a good career.
Well, look, there's not that many out there, and the ones that are out there are a little bit on the older side. So they show up and they shear, and then halfway through, they're like, oh, my back. I have to stop. I need a glass of wine. So, you gotta. Anyway, okay, so I'm back with my phone, and that wasn't the shearer. It was actually the alarm telling me that one of the guardian dogs has gone over the border into the neighboring farm, but that's fine. The farm guys can take care of that. Justin, last question for you.
Sure.
Can you do my homework?
Oh, can you do my homework? We definitely get those. So we actually got tricked by a freshman from, I want to say Syracuse University a couple of years ago. He sent us what seemed like a really interesting question of history about ancient Egypt. And we thought that he was just a homeschooler doing research because I didn't really look at his email address and realize that it was a student address from Syracuse. And so we answered and we did a little bit of grunt work and
by we, Justin means he.
I think it was mostly me, and I did it. and we sent him this fairly detailed answer and some suggestions about other books he could check out and some links and footnotes. And then a couple of weeks later, he hit us again with another one from a slightly later era in history. And we didn't realize until we saw the second question that these were just his homework assignments. He was just pasting them in.
Oh, no.
Like sometimes without even any modification, like, include 2 written sources and blah, 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 blah. And so we politely but firmly let him know that our stage in helping his education had come to an end. But there's questions we do love to get, honestly.
Yeah.
We love to get really nerdy specific questions because I feel like
and again, when we say we mean Justin here.
yes, I'll admit. But like, I feel like homeschooling is really good at allowing young sort of nerds and geeks to stretch their muscles. And we got this awesome question about the tactics of the medieval longbow, and it really went into a lot of depth. And you could tell that this young adolescent person really cared about this. And so we took some time and, it was mostly me, took some time and found some great sources for him and some books and videos that he could watch. I mean, there's people that have made their whole careers on trying to reconstruct, ancient war chariots or medieval longbows and things like that and tell you about them. And we love to point you in that direction of where you can continue your learning and your inquiry and your enjoyment of whether it's history or science or math or whatever. The other one that's a lot of fun to get is, I think it's First Language Lessons Level 4.
Oh, yes.
Grammar
you have
curriculum.
to write a customer service letter.
Yes. So it ends with this writing exercise where they're encouraged to write an email or letter to Well-Trained Mind Press complaining about a missing page in a book. And it teaches them the proper form for writing a business letter or email. And some of the kids write them so creatively. We get letters saying, I bought a dragon from you and the dragon won't breathe fire. It doesn't work. And, it only breathes steam. And I want my money back, all my gold pieces and treasure that I gave you for this dragon. Or we got one that the return address was on the Death Star, and it was like a Sith Lord in training. And it said that like the stormtroopers you sent me don't work right. And it was so much fun. And so we have a lot of fun writing those kids back, and we try to put as much creativity into writing them back as they put into writing to us. So we enjoy that.
I remember one of the very first ones that came in. It was right after First Language Lessons 4 had been published. And I had actually forgotten that we had put that assignment in there. But my mother was very insistent that people know how to register complaints. That's really an important thing to know how to do and do it well. And we got this letter in that said, I just bought a copy of First Language Lessons 4 and pages 200 through 280 are missing. And I was like, guys, everybody, front and center, all the troops, we have a defective print run. Everything is going wrong here. And no, it was an FLL letter.
Yes. Sometimes it's actually more helpful if they make them really wacky and far afield.
Yes, because they don't sound, because that actually is a thing that could happen.
Yes. These are things that can go wrong.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah, so I don't want people to be discouraged from sending us things. We don't always sit around mocking the questions, only if they're
sometimes we do.
Extremely annoying or conspiratorial.
And I think that just goes to show our customer service team, like Susan said, is so amazing. They love helping customers. They go above and beyond. They love getting these questions, and especially love those questions from kiddos wanting to learn more.
Yeah.
Justin, thank you for still being with the press. Please stay with the press. I love that we have such a long history. I love that there's such a long track record there where I can say to you, hey, remember those letters we got in 2001 all about, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. There's a lot of value in that for an educational company because, long memories are good for human beings.
Yes. I love my job at the press. I still can't believe that you haven't watched The Magnificent Seven, so please do.
Maybe I saw it when I was like a little kid, or I might have watched it with my dad, like in a long hospital stay when we'd gone through all the John Wayne movies. It's not a John Wayne movie, is it?
It is not.
Okay, because we did all the John Wayne movies first, so that might have been like a follow-up. All right, I'll put it on my to-do list.
Awesome. And for those of you listening, if you have any questions about our curricula, you can always check out the FAQ section on our website at support.welltrainedmind.com or reach out to our amazing customer service team.
And stay tuned for our movie recommendation podcast.
Right. I'll put it in the show notes just as a reminder. We'll have
good plan.
Thank you for listening to the Well-Trained Mind podcast. You can find Susan at facebook.com/susan.wise.bauer and Susanna on Instagram at hopintohomeschool. Our engineering and mixing is done by AJ Falari at ajfalari.online. This podcast is produced by Well-Trained Mind Press, and our supervising producer is Chris Bauer. If you enjoyed the show, help us out by rating and reviewing us wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have questions, responses, or ideas for future episodes, email us at podcast@welltrainedmind.com. We'll be back next week, so stay tuned.